He asked one of his boys, like, hey, who is that? And they were like, oh, this is so-and-so's wife. And he's like, oh, call her up. And then he slept with her. So some time passes. She ends up pregnant. We're now in the book of 2 Samuel. So by this time, Saul is deceased. And David hears about what happened with the Philistines and the Amalekites, the Philistines, whatever you're going to call them, and Israelites. And he found out what happened to Saul. And he was still grieving, even though Saul attempted to him 16 times. He still had enough respect for him. And then also Jonathan, which I talked about him previously. Jonathan was Saul's son, and they were BFFs, him and David. He ended up passing away in chapter 31. David remembers their strengths. Saul did have this one son called Ishbosheth, or Eshbal, and he was still alive. Technically, the throne was supposed to go to him, but God anointed David as the king. Well, the Abner, the Saul's left hand, him and I'm gonna just call him Ishbal, they weren't having it. They were like, nope, you're not going to be the king. House of David and the house of Saul were just going at it, fighting back and forth. There was this incident where Ishbal accused Abner of sleeping around with one of Saul's concubines or wives or something like that, and Abner took offense to it. We don't know if it really happened or not, but he took offense and he went to David. He's like, hey, I'm gonna go and fight for you. David was like, okay, cool. David had this nephew named Joab. Joab was side-eyeing Abner. He was like, I don't like you, I don't trust you. And then he ended up Abner. Now, David was not okay with this. A little bit of backstory. Joab had this brother, Abner, previously when he was with King Saul, ended up Joab's brother. So it could have been that Joab didn't like him because of that, or because he just automatically switched. In chapter 4, we see that Eshbal is in chapter 5, we see that David finally becomes king of Israel, and David finally defeats the Philistines. Chapter 6 talks about how the ark is being brought to Jerusalem. So once they brought the Ark of the Covenant, or Ark of God, David was so happy. He was dancing with an ephod. We don't know how he was dressed, but Michal, by this time, Michal is King Saul, or not a king anymore, Saul's daughter, and remember, she was married to David. She loved David, so he brought her back, and she saw him dancing. She's like, how the king of Israel has distinguished himself today, going around half naked in full view of the slave girls of his servants, as any vulgar fellow would. In a way saying, you're not honorable enough to be a king by the way that you are acting like that in public. But David didn't care. He was just dancing for the Lord. He was so happy, just jumping around, dancing around. And I don't know if maybe Michal was jealous because he was like that in public, or maybe she felt resentful because of what happened to her dad. Who knows? But she did accuse him of acting undignifying. Now, because of this, she did not have any children till the day of her passing. It doesn't specify if it's because they did not have intercourse, or because just the Lord didn't bless her womb. Because we do see that throughout the Bible, that the Lord closes wombs and opens them. In chapter 7, we see how Yahweh promises to give David an enduring dynasty and throne and kingdom. If you think about it, it's talking about Jesus Christ, because this Christ does come from the Davidic line through Joseph, because Joseph was part of the house of David. In the near ancient Eastern times, people didn't have last names. They would introduce son of David, son of whoever. I was recently studying that Jesus, when he was here on earth, he would say, Son of God, Son of Man. I'm a human, but I'm also Son of God, which he is, because throughout the New Testament, let's say when Jesus was baptized, God said it, I think he said it 2 or 3 times in the book of Matthew. Don't quote me on it, read it yourself. He said, this is my son whom I love. He is confirming what Jesus was already saying. Back to this though. This verse 16, your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me. Your throne will be established forever. Praise the Lord Jesus. I love you so much. Guys, I am not going to go through all my notes because I have way too many notes. And David just starts having victory from victory to victory because he was with God. In chapter 9, David tries to find someone from the house of Saul because previously with his BFF Jonathan, he did make a promise that he was going to take care of his people. And there was this one guy named Mephibosheth, but we're going to call him Mephi because that's a long name. Mephi was Jonathan's crippled son, and David didn't find any threat because he was crippled. Like, what was he going to do? He couldn't attack him. So he took him in. He was like, hey, I'm going to take care of you. And he did. He took care of him. Chapter 10 talks about how David defeats the Ammonites, and it was just a lot of war going on. Chapter 11, guys. So by this time, the kings were going off at war, and for some reason, David stayed behind and he sent his troops. Well, he saw this very beautiful woman named Bathsheba, and he asked one of his boys, like, hey, who is that? And they were like, oh, this is so-and-so's wife. And he's like, oh, call her up. And then he slept with her. So some time passes. She ends up pregnant, and she's like, oh, I'm pregnant. David sends his nephew Joab to go to wherever her husband's post was at, and brings him to him, and he's like, hey, go wash your feet, which back then it means go clean yourself, so that he could go and be with his wife, if you know what I mean. The gentleman, his name was Uriah, and he was like, no, I'm not going to do that. How am I going to do that when my brothers in war are over there doing that? I'm not going to relax and go see my wife and be with her. Messing up David's plan. David tells his nephew Joab, because Joab was like the commander of his army. So he was like, hey, in a sense, trap him so that he can. And he did. And then David took Bathsheba as a wife. Next time we'll talk about the rest of the book of 2 Samuel.